No. Meanwhile, normally you might be heading out of the door now on the school run, but things are a little bit different this morning. Boris Johnson has defended the phased reopening of schools, despite calls from unions and council leaders for learning to move online. All primary schools in Oxfordshire will reopen today. Secondary returns staggered, with exam years going back next week and the rest the following Monday. The Prime Minister says, as far as he's concerned, schools are safe, but teaching unions have urged members not to go back. Stuart Robinson is Joint Branch Secretary of the Oxfordshire National Education Union, and he told me why he won't be going back into the classroom this week.
We've been asking for schools to obviously stay open for key worker children, and the most vulnerable will absolutely have to be in school for at least the next 2 weeks to give us a circuit break to try and get infection levels down so we can continue teaching for the rest of the term with less disruption than we had last term. We were seeing ever more students and teachers having to self-isolate at the end of last term. And we had in a meeting we held yesterday for our primary members that there's schools with teachers currently in critical care, which they picked up working last term.
Well, Rob Pavey is head teacher of Cheney Secondary School in Oxfordshire. They've got an inset day today. Good morning to you, Rob. Good to speak to you again. When we last spoke at the end of December, you were struggling to keep school open, forced by the Department for Education to keep the school open, I remember, after you'd closed. How are you feeling this morning then at the start of this term? Rob, have we got you there? No Rob Pavey at the moment. I can hear something on the line. I'll try again. Rob Pavey, are you there? No. All right, we'll come back to you in a moment, Rob. Very strange. I can hear the line there. We'll try and go back to Rob in just a moment. Let's go on to Dr. Helen Wimalarathna. You're a parent in West Oxfordshire, doctor I know, but also an infectious disease epidemiologist based at the University of Buckingham. How do you feel about what's going on with schools at the moment, Helen? There's some debate about whether schools are a hotbed for the virus or not, especially with this new variant.
Yeah, I think the thing is, with the new variant in particular, everywhere can be a hotbed for the virus and for transmission. All it takes is for one case to get into that situation. And we know that it's massively more transmissible than the virus as we knew it beforehand. And one of my main concerns in that respect is that all of the safety protocols that have been implemented in schools and which head teachers and teachers have been working very hard to keep in place over the last term, they were all based on our assumptions based on the virus before this new variant arose. And I don't think they're going to be sufficient now to keep anyone safe.
The idea being, presumably, that because we don't know enough about this, then the idea of keeping classrooms in bubbles might be meaningless?
I think, well, it is difficult to keep the bubbles completely separate from each other. For example, I have 2 school-age children, so they're in 2 different bubbles. So that means, obviously there are lots of links outside of school between the bubbles. But I think also the things that we've come to know about distance, about disinfecting, these are likely to be insufficient now that we have this new variant, which is rampant and which we know it takes a smaller dose, a smaller number of virus particles to become infected. So I think we have to really rethink all of the safety strategies that have been put in place so far.
And this is across education, because the perception up until now has been that for younger children it's safer than secondary education, that it's okay with primary schools, it's okay for them to go back. Do we need to challenge those assumptions as well now then?
Absolutely, we do. So I know Boris Johnson reassured us all yesterday that it's completely safe to send our children to school. From the same mouth that told us we'd be back to normal by Christmas. So I don't have a huge amount of confidence in that. But we know that this new variant is more transmissible in all age groups. We haven't seen an attendant rise in disease in children, so we haven't seen many more serious disease cases and hospitalizations in children, thank goodness. But that's not really the point. If I don't send my children to school, it's not just me being selfish, thinking I'll keep my family safe. It's me thinking, what should I do for the population to reduce transmission. It may be that my children would pick this up and be asymptomatic, be completely unaffected by it, but they will pass it on. They're part of the population, and I don't want to be responsible for prolonging this pandemic and for causing more disease and death.
So will you be sending your daughter back to school then, Helen, or not?
So my kids are not due back today because of an inset day. The rules stipulate that I should send my children back to school, but if the rules are mandating behaviour, which all of my professional experience tells me is detrimental to the health of the population, then I'm afraid I have to break them.
Fascinating. Thank you very much, Dr. Helen Wimalarathna, who's a parent, as you heard, an infectious disease epidemiologist based at the University of Buckingham. Rob Pavey's here now, head teacher of Cheney Secondary School. Rob, we've got you back. I don't know what happened a moment ago. Apologies if we had problems with the line. As I said, your school, well, you closed leading up to Christmas, then you were forced to reopen again. How are you feeling about the changes at the start of this new term?
Well, good morning. Yes, indeed. The disappointing thing was that having been forced to reopen, there were, of course, relatively predictably 4 children who tested positive who were forced to come in at the end of last term. I'm afraid I agree with the previous 2 speakers you've had, that at the minute things have changed. We are in a different situation to what we were last term, and I do think that the call for the union to have 2 weeks online at the start of term universally is probably sensible. I mean, the silly thing is that we all agree, the government, the unions, Ofsted, the Children's Commissioner, everybody agrees that it's best to have children in school, but not at any cost. And your previous guest was right. We have seen a very, very significant rise in the transmissibility of the new variant, and I'm pretty certain that that's what we had in Cheney at the end of last term.
Do you feel safe opening the doors this term, Rob, at the moment as things stand then, or not?
Well, yes, until we get... So I'm not worried about the kids, but like your previous guest said, the chances of them, and actually the huge majority of my staff, getting properly sick themselves is very small. I'm not worried for myself either, although I'm slightly older than our average staff member. But I am worried about some of our staff who are older or who have medical conditions, or for people who are living with people who are clinically vulnerable. So while we are doing majority of teaching online, and we're able to do very good social distancing with just the skeleton school running, yes, it's safe. When we have 1,600 kids back in, I'm just not sure it is. And I think I'm afraid that we will see very significant spread pretty quickly. As we discovered last term, in the second half of the term, we had 6 or 7 cases, and none of the close contacts developed symptoms. In the last 2 weeks of term, we had 1 case came into a tutor group in year 8, and we reckon, best guess, that 3/4 of that tutor group caught it. So there's been a very, very significant shift in the transmissibility, which we're seeing every day in school.
And finally, mass testing. I mean, my son, who's at secondary school, has got this coming up in the coming weeks, and we're told the children are going to have to test themselves. Is that workable? I mean, I can't imagine that. It's hard enough getting them to brush their teeth some days.
How long have you got? The mass testing regime, again, this is something that we all agree, doing mass testing of asymptomatic kids in school is a good idea because it can help break the train of transmission. What we've got at the minute, on the other hand, is not a good idea because it just hasn't been thought through, I'm afraid. There are very serious doubts about the reliability of the lateral flow tests. I mean, there's some studies done in Birmingham University and the population studies in Liverpool suggest, the most optimistic is only 70% accurate, possibly as low as half. And the one from Birmingham University suggested much, much lower even. And that can help pick up a few cases, all well and good. But what it can't do is keep kids in school. There's a suggestion that someone who's a close contact of a confirmed positive case can stay in school by serially doing these tests every day for a week. I'm afraid that's downright dangerous, because if you've only got a 50% chance of picking up a positive case, you're leaving people who have a high chance of being infectious in the population, because you can't socially distance in schools.
Fascinating, Rob. Talking to you as always. We'll speak again. I'm sure. Good luck with whatever this school year brings. Thank you for coming on this morning. Rob Pavey is head teacher of Cheney Secondary School.